Yo, welcome to another episode of Under the Surface, a talk show where we talk all things bizarre. What would you say if the prices of items were affected by demand? Imagine the most popular items being slightly more expensive to offset their power. That is what we are discussing today. Would it be cool, or are there some drawbacks? Well, let's see what's hidden under the surface. I'm not going to pretend that this is something that I thought of. Like, I saw this on Reddit some time ago. It's a cool idea to have in the game, and we are talking about dynamic price changes for the items. I'm not saying that this should be in the game right now and it's something of importance. It's just something to think about and, consider. Items have like two sorts of mana that is tied to them. First of all, they have size, so this can be understood as some sort of mana, but they also have price in gold, right? I suppose you cannot really modify the size of the items as of right now. Like, we know that we might get tiny enchantment at some point, which will shrink an item by one size, so this could manipulate that mana cost. Gold or prices for the items are rather fixed, and you cannot really influence it. Well, maybe there are a couple of items that increase the value of themselves, or other items which increase values of other items, but it's mostly about being able to sell them for more. Yeah, that's all right. But I was thinking that in the Bazaar, haggling, regardless what Andy says, has its place in the Bazaar. Based on the demand during, let's say, a day or an hour, I'm talking right now about real life days or real life hours. If an item, maybe Beast of Burden, for example, is particularly sought out, the game could recognize that this item possibly can be really good, maybe it's overperforming, so dynamically it could increase that item's price. There would need to be some sort of algorithm for like fair price increase. It shouldn't simply double the price of the item or something like that. Yeah, and game also would need to know, it would need to track the rate of people buying the certain items in real time, or at least in some intervals.
Yeah. I think they have that on the back end sort of now too. Like I know they can track that, so maybe it's not totally insane to somehow implement it into the game. Like the tech is sort of exists now
I mean,
for like real balancing reasons, you know?
yeah, I suppose some base for this system is probably in the game. We have those items, and each item has its own price value, gold value, right, attached to it. So, for example, small bronze item, it's always going to cost you 2 gold to buy. Let's say a silver medium item is going to cost you 8 gold. Maybe if a particular item is used by most of the boards, then maybe slowly increasing it, let's say by 1, by 2 gold. At some point, people will steer towards other items because using that most overpowered item isn't going to be the best financial decision for you. This could, guide people towards other unexplored builds instead of, focusing over and over on the best item. And buffing and nerfing items is definitely the most obvious solution. That's what all card games do. But maybe this would allow for Tempo Team to not focus on balancing the game as much and more on, adding new content. And I'm sure there are groups of people that are dedicated to certain parts of the game, like it's not all jumbled up. It would add this flavor to the game that is not present right now. And I'm going to reiterate, I'm not saying that this should be in the game. I like this gold system as it is right now, but maybe it could be explored.
I think like the more I'm sitting here listening to you talk about it, the more I'm kind of selling myself on it. You know, it's like I don't know, like it does kind of auto balance itself. It fits the theming, kind of like you said. I don't know. I know implementing this would probably be an absolute pain, but I hope they do it at some point. I think the real question is how high of a or low of a price can an item get, you know? Like, I'm sure there'd have to be, like, some sort of cap there because it could be like, it could be totally insane, but at the same time, it should balance itself out too since it's, you know, typical supply and demand. The other question is maybe once you jump into a run, does it lock in the prices of everything? Because, like, what if you, like, you know, start a run and then walk off or don't come back to it for a few days and you show up and the price of your items is, like, doubled or something?
I guess that's how the market works, right? I don't know if you remember, but Reynard mentioned that he would like the game to be patchable live, so without any downtime to the servers. This would probably work in the same manner, but as I said, I'm not necessarily thinking about the price be tracked like every second, you know, but the prices could adjust like let's say every 24 hours, you know, so there's some stability, but for example, if one day Beast of Burden was extremely popular because it's fresh after the patch and it's dominating the ranks, maybe next day it could be like 20% pricier.
Yeah. I mean, I like it. I mean, it made me like it is a strong word. I think Tempo should definitely think about this in the back of their minds. Maybe they've considered it before, you know, it seems.
I mean,
Like you said, other
yeah,
people mentioned it, but
you know, if people on Reddit are mentioning it, Tempo was thinking about it a couple of years ago. Like that's how it works in game design usually.
if people on Reddit are mentioning it, maybe it's not a good idea. Raynad seems to be pretty butthurt about what people on Reddit say, so
Yeah, I'm treating this more of a thought experiment and not
Mhm.
necessarily like a demand or proposition of improvement, because I'm not saying that this will definitely improve the game. It could very well make game not fun at all, because predictability might be actually a strong suit for the game, you know. If you were to implement something like this, like those dynamic price changes, I guess some sort of stock market or whatever, like an additional menu would be probably useful at that time, where you could see all the price changes for that particular day, you know, so you're not, I don't know, like surprised that your favorite item is suddenly 20 or 50% more expensive.
that would be nice. Or maybe it could even be like a thing when you log in every day, like the prices of these items have changed the most, or like boulder stonks are up big or whatever. I don't know. It'd be kind of fun to see and be like, oh crap, well, I guess I'm not doing a boulder run today, or I got to be a gazillionaire before I can grab that boulder.
This could also be some sort of like event mechanic, you know, just to spice things up. And if people like it, then it could stay. But at the same time, like if it doesn't work out, you can simply say, yeah, the event has ended. Thank you for participating, or something like that.
I like that a lot. I know Overwatch does kind of these quick play test modes that only last for a weekend, so people can try something new and then they can see how it goes. So that'd be kind of cool if the Bazaar implemented something like that. And occasionally we had some like a wacky weekend type thing where something like this was implemented, you know, just to spice things up every once in a while and test new things after the game's fully launched.
I mean, I feel like this game is spicy enough as it is. Like, I'm constantly finding new builds, and even if it doesn't, you know, get me to 10 wins, I usually have a pretty good time, you know, trying new items and seeing silly synergies between items. I'm not going into the detail in regards to the latest patch, but since the charge meta, the game's been pretty tame, and you can try out a lot of stuff without feeling like you're intentionally like breaking your kneecaps.
Yeah, I agree. We'll have to next episode's talking about the patches, so
Yeah,
stay
most
tuned
likely.
for that. But yeah, the game's in a good place, and oh man, I lost my train of thought. I was gonna
Then you may save it for the next episode. Yeah, but back to this price changes and this sort of stock market. On one hand, this increased complexity could bring some flavor to the game, like you are actually juggling items on the bazaar to be the best merchant there ever was. But would that create a game outside of the game? Like you would have to follow the price changes and think about it before you even start a game. Would you have to plan that, okay, today the best pig items are, well, more expensive, so maybe I should play other heroes because their items haven't been nerfed in a sense.
Yeah. I can see some of the flaws here. But I don't know, because you would want, maybe it's a good thing to pull people away from Pig if Pig's, dominating the meta or something, though, too, to give people more variety, force them into variety, I guess. But also, yeah, it adds a whole thing outside of the game. And maybe it's just too mentally taxing.
We only have 3 heroes right now, and what would happen when we have like 6 heroes, right? And you have to track 6 to 700 items at the same time.
Ooh. Yeah. It's starting to sound like a lot.
Yeah, so on one hand, this idea is fun because it self balances, and you have to take into the consideration that some of the best items could be more expensive than usual. But at the same time, if this system would be actually implemented, then how much transparency about this system should be present, how much of the information should be readily available.
Yeah, and the way their tempo seems to want to go with this game is every piece of info you could possibly ever want for the game would be available in game. So I assume they would want to put it all somewhere, because if not, somebody else is going to just track it on a site. Like with how Bazaar does now. When they implement the Atlas, that's kind of be irrelevant. So I assume they would have like a stonks tracker.
It's hard to say if this would actually add to the game. Right now, you know how much items are going to cost based on the size, and no effect really decreases the value or increases the value based on vibes, essentially. Like, yeah, we have crypto, which randomly assigns its value to itself, but that's sort of the flavor of the card, right? And loop like increases the value of your item, of your small items across the board. And some items can increase their value, like landscraper or vineyard, but that's part of the mechanic and not something that is underlying in the game.
Yeah, I didn't even think about cards that are like Vineyard or something that totally rely off their own value. That would be interesting for like them. I don't know if that would be good or not, like to have their value change based on that sort of thing. Because they like actually just get better if their value is more.
In some degree, yes. On one hand, like this price is comparable to mana system, but some items actually interact with this mana system. Would balancing them be tied to like the dynamic price changes? And if so, like how much do you have to like think about it when doing that? And also, like if you were to introduce new effect that sort of cares about the value of items, how much do you have to take into the consideration that at some point its value can get increased by a percentage because people are buying it a lot? And if people are buying it a lot, will it get even stronger because of that? Take deed, for example. Like it increases the value of your items, and technically it only happens during a fight, but it would be twice as good for items that have increased value because of the dynamic price changes, and it would be worse for items that are cheaper because of the dynamically changed value, right? So imagine pawn shop and nobody buys pawn shop. Well, for some reason they do not buy pawn shop, so its price is decreased, and nobody buys pawn shop even more because, well, it now gives even less health, so it will accelerate itself into a downward spiral.
Yeah. I didn't think about that, but that's it's not great. Also, heroes like Pygmalion who heavily focus on, he has a lot of items that focus on the value of things while the other heroes don't. So he's more affected by this in terms of gameplay. So it's definitely could hurt balancing things more than it helps it, I guess, in that way.
That's why I'm not saying that it's like necessary for the game, but I mean, idea has some upsides to it, but when we start poking holes, it stops looking so appealing.
Yeah, I started out not really being certain about it, and then I was like, yes, this sounds really cool. And then now I'm like, sounds kind of bad now again.
Yeah, I suppose that's what Reynolds means when he says that Reddit doesn't really know what they are talking about, because like on the surface this idea looked really cool, but now there are a lot of downsides to it and a lot of unintended collateral effects.
Yeah, like there's probably still something interesting in here to be done with this, but what that looks like. I know like game development's insane, so what it looks like when you've thought about it and messed around with it after so long, it's almost completely different. I'm sure.
If we were to actually add this dynamically changing value of items, how much would you change those values? Because like if you were to increase price of a large item by like 1 or 2, that's not really significant, so it's essentially negligible. You don't really care about it. I mean, I guess you might find yourself that you're 1 gold short and then you're sort of salty about that. But if you are rolling in gold, then it doesn't really matter. So this price change would have to be significant enough for you to feel like, oh yeah, I paid more, or oh yeah, I paid less. When you do that, like this also affects the economy from this other angle, so if you have to pay more for certain items, then all the gold gain sources are sort of weakened, right? Because they do not give you enough for you to be able to buy items that you actually want. There's like this butterfly effect, like this one change sort of affects all the systems that are in the game.
Yeah. But your average Redditor doesn't think of that. And that's why it would be hilarious if for April Fools they did like a Redditors, like they just took opinions from Reddit and changed the game like that for a day for like an April Fools mode. It'd be so funny to wake up and like the worst takes on Reddit are like all the balance changes. Oh my God. I want it to happen so bad. It's sitting right there. Tempo, just do it.
I mean, that would be probably a lot of work for just 1 day of fun, but if you do not have any ideas for what to do with the game, that's like one last thing to like at the bottom of the list. I'm not sure if we have covered this topic thoroughly enough, but I guess we have looked at it from a couple of different angles. There's still some merit to it, but it would need some deep consideration and limits if you were to actually put it into the game. That's why I don't suspect we will see anything remotely similar to this anytime soon, or if ever. Maybe down the line when the game is sort of established and it's going to look for something to reinvent itself. Maybe this could be something to think about.
Yeah, and I'm definitely interested to hear what people think about this and what like other wacky or maybe similar ideas they've thought of that could be interesting for the game, because even if these takes are kind of bad sometimes, it's fun to hear what people are thinking about different systems and stuff. And who knows, you might be the next genius and Tempo instantly hires you and gives you $1 trillion because you came up with the system that makes this game the biggest game ever.
Yeah, and like if you earn like $1 trillion, just don't be like Bezos. Actually, help people or something.
Yeah, help us. We're helping set you out in this journey.
Right. So if you have any like ideas, first of all, like for some wacky changes to the game that maybe Reddit inspired in you, and also if you like feel like there's some obvious drawback for this dynamically change prices, write that in the comments. And yeah, be good to each other, like leave a like, leave a sub in that order, and yeah, we'll see you on Thursday. So bye.
See ya.